There is just something out of whack within the AFL trade and free agency system. It's so consistently inconsistent that no one has any idea about the compensation a club gets when a free agent leaves, until a magical hidden committee announces it. There has always been a medium level of frustration around this part of free agency, but this season and 2023 have highlighted how much it is broken. So let's have a look at the big free agent moves at the time of making this. The big beneficiary is St Kilda, who got band 1 compensation for defender Josh Battle leaving to Hawthorn on a 6-year deal. That band 1 compensation was in the form of pick 8 in the national draft. Now Battle is a good AFL player, but would Hawthorn have given up pick 8 for him? I think we all know the answer to that. St Kilda president Andrew Bassett at their best and fairest went off on the AFL for all its draft inequities and assured everyone the Saints won't back down for fighting for what's fair. Although I don't see him complaining about how his club clearly got way overs for losing one of their players. 2 former Giants also headlined the issue. Harry Perryman landed at Collingwood, again on a 6-year deal. Now overall, he has been a bit more accomplished than Battle up until this point in their careers, but he is far from a superstar. He's played more than 20 games in a year just twice, and the most disposals he has averaged in a single season was 22 in 2021. Like Battle, he is a good player, but his compensation pick of 16, which GWS gets, is very high. Would Collingwood have given up pick 16 for him? Maybe, but if you were to do a hypothetical trade, the Giants would likely give a pick or 2 back to Collingwood. But it's Isaac Cumming that is the most bizarre when compared to these other 2. He played just 6 AFL games in 2024 and couldn't find a spot in defence or on the wing, so when he joined Adelaide, most would have thought his compensation would be an end of round 2 or round 3 pick in the national draft. But no, his compensation landed in band 2 and equated to an end of round 1 selection in the form of pick 21. That is laughable for a player who barely played because of injury and form. Again, would the Crows give up pick 21 for Cumming? Absolutely not. 2024 follows on from the form of last year when Tom Doedee leaving to Brisbane got the Crows pick 19, Ben Mackay left North Melbourne to Essendon and got the Kangas the 3rd pick in the national draft, and St Kilda benefited again as small forward Jade Gresham left for Essendon and they ended up with pick 21. To give some perspective, remember when Lance Franklin left Hawthorn and walked his way to Sydney in one of the biggest player moves in history? Well, Hawthorn received pick 19 for one of the greatest forwards ever, and at the same time, Collingwood somehow got pick 11 for losing Dale Thomas to Carlton. Consistently inconsistent. Now to give the AFL a bit of a break here, the free agency system in our sport is pretty new. It was introduced at the end of 2012, so it is barely a decade old. We also have restricted and unrestricted free agents, which add another element to the discussion. Now without going too far in depth, the time a player spends in the AFL, if they were delisted and etc., decide if a player is a restricted free agent, which means the club they are at can match any bids, and either force the player to stay or force a trade, where unrestricted means the player has total freedom to go anywhere, but we'll get back to that later. So how does the AFL in all its wisdom decide what a moving free agent is worth in terms of draft capital? Well, it uses this incredibly complicated formula: the new contract of the player and their age. That's it. Apparently from those 2 dot points, a numerical rating for the player's worth is produced. Then, to quote exactly from the AFL, in applying the formula, an expert committee reviews the formula outcomes. The committee has the power to recommend alternative outcomes to GM football operations, where the formula produces a materially anomalous, meaning standard result. This is just so weird. So the AFL gets a point rating on the system for the free agent, but then a committee can just recommend it changes? Your guess is as good as mine. But I think going through this makes it clear why we get random overcompensation for some players and then average at best compensation for others. So what are some of the options to make the free agency system better? Well, the first possible fix is to get rid of all compensation. Again, this is what most other leagues with a free agency component do. It does make sense. The player is a free agent, so therefore they don't actually have a team. However, in the AFL, with so many of our clubs in Victoria, this would really hurt the teams like GWS and Gold Coast. We can even use the Giants as an example right now. If we had no compensation system implemented at all, it means they would lose Perryman and Cumming for nothing. If we had an equal amount of teams in each state, this would probably be a better option, as there wouldn't be any location inequalities. Another option that is viable is no compensation for unrestricted free agents. Because the team can't match in this scenario, then it does mean the play is completely free, and in most cases, the quality of unrestricted free agents isn't as good as restricted free agents due to a lot of them being formerly delisted players or veteran players. But the likelihood is that both these options would be declined in the end. So with some of the rules in place now, how can the compensation be a more accurate representation of the player's quality? Well, first off, why is the new contract relevant whatsoever? You are worth what someone is willing to pay, but that shouldn't influence the value of a player and what they have achieved in the past. It's just a weird metric to base a compensation pick on. Surely a better way is to give points to things achieved, such as All Australians, Best and Fairest, and games played. The only way you can actually be any type of free agent is to serve 8 years at one club or be previously delisted, so with that length of time in the league, accolades and games played are a pretty good measure on a player's real worth and their ability. A new formula could incorporate the player's age, games played at AFL level, best and fairest wins, top 5 and top 10 finishes, and all Australian squad and team selections. You can throw in Brownlow's, Coleman's, and the other major accolades too. And then for that weird committee which can overrule the original system, that would have to go, as from the outside it's probably the main cause of all the inconsistencies. Using a similar system to this one would likely prevent Battle from getting pick 8 compensation, and definitely stop a player like Cumming getting the Giants a ridiculous selection of 21. Free agency will get a review soon. Even the AFL themselves must know the randomness of it isn't a great look, and the clubs will complain. In fact, Geelong's list manager Andrew Mackey already took a small public shot at the system in his trade press conference, believing that any compensation in the future should stay out of the first round of the national draft. The fans and some high-profile media names have called out the inequities of it, and the fix seems relatively simple and would help give a more sensible outcome for all future compensation picks.